In today's episode, I'm gonna answer one of your comments, and specifically, could you share some of your experience with studios interviews? For this reason, I'm gonna tell you the story behind my first 4 jobs in the industry, and at the end of this video, I'm gonna share with you some tips on how to prepare for an interview. Hello everyone, and welcome back to The Storyteller Chronicles, where we talk about the craft and business of storytelling. I'm your host Camilo Clauser, and I'm a storyboard artist for feature and TV animation. As new grads are coming into the industry, I thought this was a perfect time to share the story behind my first jobs and give you some tips on interviews. The story of my first job starts in November of my senior year, when I went to CTN and approached the Blue Sky booth, among many others, and got an appointment for the afternoon. When I went back, the situation was a bit chaotic, as anyone who has been at the tent of CTN might know. So I randomly approached one of the people at the booth and told him I had an appointment for a story portfolio review, and he was like, yeah, sure, I can take a look. At the time, I didn't know who this person was. He was very nice, looked through all my portfolio, gave me great tips I still use today, like not taking the camera too up high if we want the audience to be part of the story. And at the end, he gave me his business card, told me he liked my stuff and to keep in touch. Now, for those of you who don't know, there are 3 scenarios when you interact with the studio at a booth. A, they thank you, shake your hands, and that's it. B, they give you a business card, but it's a generic one for recruiting. And C, they give you a business card with the personal company's email. In my case, it was the latest of the 3, and the person I was interacting with was Adam, one of the head of story of Blue Sky, which honestly blew my mind. After a few weeks, I emailed him wishing Happy Thanksgiving, CTN is in November, and thanking him for his advice. And that was it. Until March, when my friend Erin, who was helping me with my thesis film, came by and told me she got a summer internship at Blue Sky. Inspired by her story, I decided to reach out to Adam, hoping he would remember me, letting him know that I was about to graduate and asking for any feedback on my work. To my surprise, he remembered me and answered my email, but instead of feedback, he told me he was having a meeting for the trainee program in a few days, and if I was interested, he could suggest my name. I was speechless. And of course, I replied, yes, please. After a few weeks, I was contacted by the HR team that informed me I was being selected for the trainee program. In this case, I can't really give you advice about interviews because I never had a formal interview. But I think it's a good story to share because it shows you that not all jobs come through interviews and how important it is to follow up after you meet someone in person. My second job was technically my first one, as I signed as a storyboard revisionist with DHX Media after the offer from Blue Sky, but I worked for them before moving to New York. Every year, my college organizes an event called Industry Day, where most of Canadian studios and some from abroad come to the school to check new grads' work. They then have a chance to meet with students and interview them. Director Joss and producer Brian were there representing DHX Media, recruiting for a new Netflix show called Carmen Sandiego. They interview me and offer me a position as hand-drawn key animator. At that point in time, it is something that, looking back, was fundamental in the development of my career. I told them in all honesty that even if the offer was really amazing, my goal was to be a storyboard artist. So they put a different offer on the table, letting me know that if I was interested, they were also looking for storyboard revisionists. They quickly discussed it with the other director, Kenny, over the phone, and that is how I got my first gig in a story department. I also made them aware of my agreement with Blue Sky, which would start in November, so they offered me a contract for 5 months that will cover the gap between my graduation and my moving to the States. The interview itself was pretty straightforward. I signed an NDA, they showed me some of the artwork from the pitch Bible, they explained the show, their expectations, and also gave me the chance to ask some questions. I will tell you more about my questions during interviews later in this video. What I learned from this experience is that sometimes you won't be applying to studios, but they will find you. So after New York, I moved back to Canada. Once relocated to Toronto, I went through 3 long months of unemployment, which were extremely beneficial as they forced me to be humble. Since that experience, I have been working harder than ever, never giving any job for granted, from the smallest preschool show to the bigger budget feature film. After applying to many studios, I decided to go to the Taffy Job Fair here in Toronto. There I showed my portfolio, receiving a lot of compliments, but no real offers. After hours on the floor going from booth to booth, I was pretty much done. But on my way out, I walked by the Gemfield booth, and I remember thinking, they're not gonna have any job anyway, but why not try? The guy at the booth, who I found out later was also about to leave and was one of the head of the Toronto studio, looked at my stuff and told me, "I actually like this. I might have something for you." And that's how, a week later, Gemfil emailed me asking for an interview for a storyboard artist position. On the day of the interview, I met with the producer and the director of the show I would later be a part of. They talked about the show and explained some unique aspects of its production. In particular, the fact the storyboard artists were using Maya to stage the shots and Storyboard Pro to draw over the screenshots. For those of you who are not familiar with it, Autodesk Maya is a CG animation software. Now, at the time, I only had professional experience with Photoshop and only some vague memory of Storyboard Pro and Maya from college. So, after 3 months of unemployment and bills to pay, to the question, are you comfortable with these softwares? My answer was yes. I went home and studied everything I could, learned as much as possible, and to be honest, it was a great experience and I learned a ton from that job. So don't be scared and don't let opportunities run away from you. As usual, during the interview, they asked me if I had any question for them, and we will talk about that soon. But first, let me tell you about my 4th job experience. We talked about a job that I had by following up with a contact I made in person, another one where the studio found me at my graduation event, and a third one that I got by reaching out to a company during a job fair. The 4th job I'm going to talk about is a freelance gig I did for a company overseas. The company initially contacted a friend of mine, but she was really busy with other projects, so she asked me if I was looking for freelance. She was kind and nice enough to give my name and website to the studio. When the company reached out to me, it wasn't really an interview, it was more like a meeting where they were presenting the project and giving space to me to ask questions. I think it's an important example to bring up as it shows you that jobs opportunity can come from any direction, in this case, friends. These are the stories behind my first 4 jobs out of school, but there were a lot of more interviews, especially during those 3 months of unemployment. And as you can guess, not all of them led to a job. Despite that, I still believe that when you get an interview, you are already that close to getting the position, because they already like your work enough to take time off their busy schedule to meet with you. These interviews are more about you as a person. What they're trying to do is to see if you are a good fit for their team. And it's in your interest to be yourself during the interview because you don't want to work for a team that doesn't fit you. Someone once told me that the people interviewing you want you to succeed, want you to be the perfect fit. And that's because they want the project to succeed, but also because they don't want to waste another second looking for the right person. When you realize that, it flips your perspective. It definitely changed mine and the way I approach interviews. So jumping into practical advices, this is what I like to do before a meeting with a potential client like a studio. First, if they give me the title of the show or the film, I try to go through all the information I can find about it. That includes any material they might have provided. Second, if I know who am I meeting, I like to check their website, IMDb page, or anything that can give me a glimpse into who they are. They sure checked mine, so I like to know as much as possible about them or their studio. Finally, I write down any question I might have for them. Usually they answer most of them during the interview, but it's a good habit to write them down and have them ready. I don't physically bring them with me during the interview, but if it's over Skype or Hangout or Zoom, I like to keep those questions in front of me on the table. I think that having questions shows that you're professional and that you know what kind of information you need to consider their offer. At this point, you might be wondering, what kind of question am I supposed to ask? Well, it really depends on the project and the client, but here is a list of what I usually ask. For TV, how many weeks per episode? How many episodes am I boarding? How many pages is an average script? How many board artists are per episode? Do I get a full fun pack before each episode? A fun pack in this case is a collection of all the design you need for storyboarding, which includes location, props, and characters. How rough or clean are the boards expected to be? This question is also true for feature films, so I'll explain it better later. Am I pitching my boards or am I just sending them in? That is because a lot of studios, especially here in Toronto, like to do drawovers instead of having artists pitching. I personally prefer pitching, and that is why it is something I always ask before taking the job, because I know I will be enjoying the work much more. For feature, is the film scripted or outlined? Scripted means it will be closer to a TV production, while outline-based projects are way more fun as you have more input, but it also means you will have a lot more work to do. How rough are the boards expected to be? So here, same as before, the roughness combined with the timeline will determine how feasible something is. For me, short deadlines with rough boards are okay, but short deadlines with clean boards are not okay. How long is the contract for? This is the equivalent question of how many episodes are you gonna board on a TV production. You might have multiple offers and you might not want to take a short contract over a longer one if they are the same quality project. And even if you have just one offer, it is good to know how long the contract is for. Do you have an estimate release date? You won't be able to showcase boards until the film is released. So if they give you a date, it is more probable it will be actually produced. But don't be surprised if projects you work on will never see the light of day. What kind of expectation do they have? Page per week or panels per week depends on the production. Again, it's all about understanding if it's something you can actually do. I was once asked to storyboard 5 pages a week for a small feature film, and I had to decline because I didn't want to deliver low quality work. Finally, I personally don't like to talk about my rates during interviews unless they ask for it, which really never happens. I find that these meetings are more about professional connection and finding out if you are interested in their project. In my experience, rates and salaries are better discussed through emails after they see you as the perfect fit. And I believe this is all I have for you for this episode. If you found the video helpful or interesting, please like it and subscribe to the channel for more content. And if you have more questions you want me to answer, or you have experiences with interviews or first jobs that you want to share with our community, please leave a comment down below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time on a new episode of The Storyteller Chronicles.